Well, it is confounding. The Calgary Flames have had some quality victories this season over some of the league's best, but their Achilles heel remains not the good teams in the NHL, nor the mediocre ones, but simply the worst teams in the NHL. In 8 games against the bottom 4 teams in the NHL, they are now 2-6. That is picking up 4 of a possible 16 points. That's a lot of points left on the table against the doormats of the league in San Jose, Chicago, Columbus, and the Anaheim Ducks, who, hand the Calgary Flames another post-trade deadline loss. 5-3, your final tonight. Welcome to Afterburner. It's your pal Pinder and our buddy Mike Gould in studio.
Of course.
Mikey boy.
Pinder.
You're here.
I know. I'm excited.
How are you? This was a good night for Team Tank, but I didn't know we would have a good game to talk about. I think we needed nearly 6 minutes for our first shot on net tonight.
Yeah, and it was, if memory serves, off a really bad turnover by Cam Fowler back in that first period.
He would make up for it from the Ducks' perspective, and AJ Greer did not punish him for the mistake, a breakaway that he did not score on.
He didn't look all that threatening on, to be fair.
Yeah, that is fair. Yeah.
I think it was an equally bad giveaway and breakaway attempt. But yeah, it was a sloppy start, and it didn't get a lot better from there in the first period. I mean, the game opened up, but in the end of the day, it felt like a game between two teams that are very much waiting to go to the golf courses, I think, hitting the links in this April of 2024.
I think the GMs are excited to get to the draft floor for these respective clubs. You know, the Ducks are going to pick high, and this Calgary loss paired with some other results tonight, it is not all of a sudden out of range. I think the Calgary Flames could pick as high as 6th or 7th in this year's draft. We'll get to some of the out-of-town scoreboard notes later on. I'll look at the inverse standings, all that good stuff. Welcome to Afterburner. The loss does make it 6 losses in their last 7 for the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I mean, they are completely sputtering out, which is, I think, what a lot of people expected. I mean, at this point of the season, you kind of have to look at the silver linings, the moral victories. You have to see what the individual players on the team are doing. They saw some of that tonight with guys like Andrei Kuzmenko having a really big outing in a game that the team didn't end up winning. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at being on Team Tank, you can also want to take some of these positives out of it while also ending up finishing lower in the standings.
Let's get to one of the major talking points of the night. It is our Betway highlight of the night. This was the first of a pair of goals, not for Alex Killorn, but for Andrei Kuzmenko.
Knifing his way through the middle of the offensive zone. It was a really nice move. He's got the skill. I mean, nobody can dispute that. He's now got as many goals in his tenure with the Flames as Elias Lindholm has points.
Jeez.
Since being traded to the Vancouver Canucks.
They both missed some time. I think Lindholm's in, I think, still day-to-day.
Yeah, who knows?
And Kuzmenko had the illness, and then he's hurt, and then you might not be playing that well, so we're going to cut back your minutes. But this is as good as he's looked outside of maybe that first game burst where it's like the new toy and the excitement. Once that settled down, this has been his best run of play, I think.
It takes me back to the night of January 31st when they made that trade, when people at first, there was that conflicting information. Drager was getting the details out, and it was, people were worried that it was going to be Lindholm for Kuzmenko as the centerpiece of the deal.
Yeah.
And it ended up being Kuzmenko being the 3rd or 4th asset in this deal. And it's looking really good. I mean, the other assets look great. Hunter Brustevitz is cleaned up in the OHL coaches poll that came out today.
Yeah.
They got the 1st round pick, and now Andrei Kuzmenko. I mean, it's just gravy, and it just adds to what they're going to do with him next season. But that's going to be really interesting to follow too.
Yes. And there is a big decision to make. There are too many wingers already. I don't know what your thoughts are on Igor Sharangovich as a center versus a winger. Are there other players that can move to center in this on this roster in the system? I don't know that I have a hard yes. There's certainly some guys that you'd curious about. But if Sharangovich is a winger, you already have Mangiapane, who is a winger. Jacob Pelche is a winger. I don't think it's a stretch to suggest you could get a haul, not necessarily a Lindholm type haul, but a solid one for Kuzmenko at this point. He's exactly what a team like the New York Islanders, for example, would covet, which is a pure offensive add to a team that lacks an ability to score. And there's a few of those teams out there that they just struggle to score goals. I know St. Louis, we saw the other day when the Flames played them, and they just didn't really score a lot. Like, this is a guy that doesn't do a lot of things great, but the one thing he's sensational at is the hardest thing to do in the sport, which is create offense and score. And yes, he could be re-signed here, but I keep circling back to, are the Flames a 35-goal winger away from winning a cup?
No.
And if they aren't, when will they want a guy and be like, okay, we got to pay this? Like, when do we push chips? If you're the Flames management team, say, when do we do this on, let's say, a 30 to 40 goal top 6 winger? I don't know that next year or the year after is the year, and he's going to turn 29 next season. So really what you're talking about is a guy that is going to get on his next contract a 30th birthday cake. Is that the time to buy in if you're the Flames? Or is he more valuable to another team whose window isn't just about to open, but is maybe closing? It's an interesting conversation, and we don't know the numbers that would be traded back and forth. And wingers are a really peculiar market. You saw guys like Brock Besser being like, wow, man, if he didn't make so much money, we could move him. And you're like, oh, Jesus, that's a talented player. And, Anthony Beauvillier is a guy that has played well in this league. He moves for a 5th rounder twice in a year. Wingers just don't really have a lot of cachet unless you can be that dynamic that it's like, okay, this is unique winger things. And I don't know that Kuzmenko can't be that guy. I don't think he's a lock that he will be, but if you could pump this guy up and throw him first power play minutes and find him an offensive line that you spot in the ozone all the time, it wouldn't be surprising if you had a lot of offensive results and you would get a lot of assets back that might better fit your window to win.
Yeah, I'm on the pump and dump train with you too. I know there are Flames fans who are in favor of them extending Andrei Kuzmenko. And frankly, it's not something that should be dismissed out of hand depending on what the numbers are.
Yeah.
And you talk about the winger market being diluted, being oversaturated, especially on the trade front. Well, I think that can apply to contracts too, because guys who are wingers, who are UFAs, who are coming off of inconsistent stretches of play, don't go for much. You look at Vladimir Tarasenko having to settle for a 1-year deal with the Ottawa Senators. There's a lot of examples of wingers who have one bad year or one good year, and they alternate flip-flop, and they end up not really having not having a strong case as UFAs. So with the Flames, I mean, you talk about Sharangovich. He's a couple of years younger. He has that added versatility to them as being capable of playing center.
Yep. Which I think we've learned about this year. That's a nice add there. Yep.
I think he'll be the guy who they prioritize out of those two in terms of wanting to sign him. I don't even know what that looks like.
And I don't know that he isn't a pump and dump candidate as well. I really do. There's philosophically the question of how far do you want to tear it down, and how aggressively are you going to try to go high in the draft the next 2 years versus stay competitive. And I could see a world where both those guys hang around. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible. I could see a world where both are traded. I think it's unlikely, but it is possible. And I think the more likely outcome is that you pick one of these two guys, and maybe the tie does go to a Sharangovich, who also has shown great scoring potential. And to your point, can play the middle, which is the position of demand and need for the organization. They have 35-year-old Michael Backlund, 33-year-old Nazem Kadri, and Kevin Rooney. They don't have other centers that you can say are centers for sure right now. So maybe you have to plug your nose and have Sharangovich at center for a year or two while you're waiting for a young stud to develop that you get in the draft or via trade with Markstrom or something. But the point would be that might be the tiebreak if you're looking at a Belarusian versus a Russian that you're going to keep heading into UFA in a year.
I mean, the Flames right now look a lot like they did in 2011 when they were in a transitionary phase. They have all of Rene Bourque, Curtis Glencross, Alex Tanguay, and Lee Stempniak on the roster. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do with all these guys? You've got guys coming up. You've got Sven Berchi, who you've just drafted.
Yeah.
But none of those guys end up being long-term impacts. The impacts that they get out of those guys come out of who they trade them for and what they trade them for. So when you're looking at Yegor Sharangovich and at Andrei Kuzmenko, you're not looking at players most likely who are going to be part of this team when they are ready to do some damage.
Yeah, and if they are, they'll be in their 30s potentially, and they won't be centerpieces so much as secondary pieces.
You look at Curtis Glencross, and he is the poster boy for me of a guy who scored a lot on some teams that didn't do any damage. Yeah. And his last year with the Flames was Johnny Gaudreau's first year with the Flames. That really says a lot to me. And his first year was, Mike Camilleri, Jerome McGinley, right at the end. That was his first year was the last year they made the playoffs in a run of 5 in a year. Yeah. His last year was the first time they made the playoffs.
And they traded him that year to Washington.
That year. Right. He didn't even play in the playoffs that year. So that's what you're looking at with guys like Yegor Sharangovich and Andrei Kuzmenko. That's not to say that guys like that can't be on this team, make it watchable. But you look at a guy like Andrei Kuzmenko, who is now up to 17 goals on the season. He's a good player.
Yeah.
But he scores twice tonight and they lose to Anaheim. So he's not pushing you out of a depth that you do want to be in if you are aiming for the future.
And again, the context is important here. The Vancouver Canucks said, yeah, just take that guy too, because we need to make the money work. We want to add another part potentially at the deadline. And our coach, frankly, doesn't trust the guy.
These are the easiest types of players to get.
Yes, they are
in the league. And it is not intended as a disservice to a guy like Andrei Kuzmenko, who, for my money, has been maybe their most exciting offensive contributor this year.
Yeah,
maybe other than Sharon Govich. But you look at players who are available on the free agent market. I mean, a guy like Gustav Nyquist, who was Columbus's fallback when they lost Artemi Panarin. He ends up bouncing around. He ends up in Nashville on a cheap deal. He's 70 points, or is going to get 70 points this year, which is crazy. These guys are a dime a dozen, and that's not disrespectful to those guys. It's just the matter of, it's the currency of the league, and you have to operate within that currency. Yeah.
And I would say if you didn't have Mangiapane, if you weren't locked into Huberdeau, if you didn't have more term on Coleman, which I think makes a move difficult, that by all means, like, hang around, but you need to open up slots for the likes of Coronado and Pelche in the top 9. Never mind anyone else that wants to graduate. It's not like, oh, Pelche's here, okay, there's no more kids coming. Like, you will have Honzik, potentially Lipinski in the pro ranks next year. It's their 20-year-old seasons. They can play in the American League. You don't need to lock into guys that are in their late 20s or early 30s, but one of the two I think could make sense. It's an interesting conversation, and sort of to get back onto the Kuzmenko train, which is our Betway highlight of the night. I did score another one after that first beauty. Kent Wilson had this tweet, which you loved, and I think is interesting. Kent had noted that Kuzmenko right now has got some very Huselius vibes happening. And for those of you that remember, Christian Huselius was a guy that came in, not to a ton of fanfare, but to a bit. You knew it was an offensively talented player, but he came here and you're like, oh my goodness, it's exactly what they need and what they don't have. It's an offensive catalyst. It's an incredibly creative player. And just don't expect a lot of defense, and you can have some fun. He's a fun player to watch. The one thing with Kuzmenko, boy, it'd be a little more fun if he had another year or two of team control. He's a free agent in a year. It's his walk year next year. Craig has to do the Lindholm, Zadorov, Tanev, Hanifin dance with him, and he has to do it with Sharon Govich and Mangiapane. It's all of a sudden still a busy year for Craig with UFAs. Never mind what he's got to do with Oliver Shillington before then. Yeah, two sides to the whole Huselius thing is that, you can get guys like Andrei Kuzmenko as part of bigger deals, or you can get them on their own. And that was what they did with Huselius. It was a trade where they moved a couple of guys who didn't really have spots in their organization anymore, in Steve Montador and Dustin Johnner. And they got Huselius by himself, and they were able to plug him in. The other difference is they were at the pinnacle of their competitive window. Yeah, it was an ad for a contender. It was 06. They were the reigning Western Conference champions. Yeah. This is very much not that team. So what they were looking at with Huselius at the time was an ad to be part of the longer-term solution. Yeah. And he ended up being that. And there's a lot of stylistic comparables between Huselius and Damon Lanko, who was very much a more meat and potatoes center, not quite as big, but he had that skill, but he was also responsible. Yeah. And then you have Kuzmenko and Kadri, very similar parallels there. The only difference is for the center. And it's the difference is the kind of team that they're on. So with Huselius, they let him walk as a free agent in the end because they didn't have a reason to trade him as an expiring player because they needed him for a run. Yeah. Whereas with Kuzmenko, they have that conversation. The other point that I've seen fans make, and I think it's a valid point, is, well, if Kuzmenko's value is, if the market is so saturated, do you look at maybe weaponizing that and trying to keep him around longer so you can build up a longer time of appreciating value? Where instead of just having him around and pumping him for a year and a half, maybe you pump him for 2 years and a half, and you try to get him to a 1 or 2 year deal, if that's even possible. But that's tough, right? Because look, he's a free agent, and his agent's job is to get maximum value for him. I don't see a guy, if he has as strong of a season next year or start to the season as he's having a finisher in Calgary, like, why is he selling for 1 or 2 years? Like, I'm in my prime. I'm 29 in the summer. This is the time to go get 5-6 years with max term, right? Yeah. And I just think he's valuable here. Yep. But think of all the reasons you like Kuzmenko and fans are saying re-sign him. Think about what that would mean to a contender that has a tough time scoring. Now, it's much more valuable to them. My comeback to that is the same agent did a 2 year deal with Nikita Zadorov when they got him, and it was now that was a flat cap world. We're not living in that flat cap world. Look, he thought he was getting the good Branson deal and didn't. He overplayed his hand. But that's the thing. Are you trying to bank on the Kuzmenko agent doing that too? Because it's the same guy. So I don't know. I mean, and in theory,
in theory, the defense market would be stronger or better for the player. It didn't end up turning out that way, and Zadorov's having a disaster of a game tonight against Vegas, so who knows how that'll turn out for him. He got ejected, actually, not that long ago. But, I mean, with Kuzmenko, I just think there is more potential there for the agent to say, we're not seeing the value here. We want to stick around in a situation that is beneficial for us. Now, I don't know. Maybe you trade him, you try to get him back. It's so hard to project something that's going to happen in 11 months.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it's just, there was a game tonight. We don't have to go big picture, but Kuzmenko is suddenly becoming this lightning rod of conversation because he's playing well, which is great. When is he still hurt? Is he still sick? Is he being benched? Like, when that was happening, there wasn't this conversation. But this is the electric player that scored 39 goals in his first season in the NHL, which is wild. There just is not. It's a very unique set of circumstances. He comes over at 26-27 from Russia. I believe Edmonton and Vancouver were hot and heavy on him. Yep. Ken Holland famously took him to a Cactus Club, Joey's. And then Aquavelva in Vancouver is like, this is one of my fine restaurants I own 1,000 of. This is the chef. Say hello. Yeah, that's going to be the happy hour slimes that they were pouring over at Cactus Club or whatever. So
Flames took Roman Chervenka to Joey's back in the day.
That might have been, maybe Roman likes it.
Take him to
good HR practices.
Spaghetti Factory.
Yeah, nice people. More discourse on Kuzmenko later on in the program. We're going to take our first break, but a reminder, Betway, our official gaming partner, our pals from Betway. You want to bet the responsible way. They've got a heck of an offer going right now I want to tell you about. What does it mean? Well, if you've been thinking about signing up with Betway and having a little fun, making games a little more interesting, as you and I were doing with the Blue Jays and the Flames tonight, check out this QR code. Wow, look at this. If you start a new account, scan this code, claim your bonus, you can get up to $200 back on your first bet. There is no minimum wager, but if you lose your first bet after claiming the promo, you're going to get that money sent right back into your account. That, pretty good deal from Betway. So scan that QR code, have a little fun. It was a good day on the Betway. We hit from the barn burner bets, Kuzmenko anytime goal. That was, let me see what we had, plus 200. Love that. We had the Zegras assist at plus 187. And I felt the urge to hit a little over 6.5, which was incredibly troublesome in the first period to look at, but ended up paying out as well. Never mind the Blue Jays comeback.
That bomb by Davis Schneider late.
That should have been the highlight of the night.
Give that guy a contract extension. I don't even know what his contract is, but give him a contract
he's getting team control $500,000. That's what they all make till they get into Darb.
That's perfect.
We will take a break. We'll come back. More thoughts on a setback to the Ducks, but big picture, is it a win for the Flames? Back in a moment on Afterburner.
Greta, it's our home away from home for Afterburner. We'll be there for live watch parties throughout the season. Should be your spot regardless. Before, during, and after the game, grab a cocktail, something from the menu, let the games begin, or maybe you get into the game yourself. Over 50 arcade games from vintage to state-of-the-art. Load up some credits on that Greta game card of yours and get at it. Greta Calgary, located at 213 10th Avenue Southwest. Check them out online, gretabar.com.
It's nearly the best time of the year. Playoff hockey is around the corner, and I'll tell you what, the Grey Eagle Resort and Casino is the place to be. Cheer on your favorite teams with us at the Stage Bar. Enjoy the big game on one of those huge screens over the bar with friends, drinks, and delicious food. Let's go. Visit GreyEagleResortandCasino.ca for more information. Now, while I've got your attention, let me tell you about the happy hour at the Grey Eagle Resort and Casino. Let's make the most of the day and spend your afternoons with great drinks and food. Join us at the Stage Bar and Blaze Bar and Grill for our new happy hour every day, 2 till 5. Enjoy food, drinks, all starting at $5. Make the most of your days. Visit GreyEagleResortandCasino.ca for more information. If you're thinking of buying or selling your home in the Calgary area, there's one guy you've got to talk to. That's Derek Newman of the Derek Newman Real Estate Group with CIR Realty. Buying or selling doesn't really matter. Derek does it all. He's a volunteer in the community, active in sports around the city, whether it's golf, curling, huge Flames fan. So talking sports or talking about the real estate market, definitely give him a shout. He's approachable, trustworthy, and hardworking. Also, Derek's got a pretty vast network. He's even got access to some homes often that aren't even on the market yet. And you can ask him about his complimentary home staging consultation as well. Buying or selling, Call him or text him right now at 403-619-6661. Derek will make it easy for you. Get Derek and his network to work for you. That's Derek Newman. Email him at dnewman@cirrealty.ca. More post-game reaction right here. We're back on Afterburner. A 5-3 victory for the Ducks over the Flames here on Afterburner. It's Ryan Pinder and Mike Gould coming to you on a Tuesday from our Marta Loop studios. Mike?
Yo, what can I do for you, Rye?
Can you explain the losing to shitty teams thing?
You know,
because it's not like they're just a shitty team. They're not. We've seen the Flames trade blows with very good teams. They've beaten Edmonton. They've beaten Vancouver. They've given better teams fits like Dallas. They took the season series. They've played Vegas well, and I think have won that season series. Why?
I just think it's a matter of, at this point of the season, I think they are checked out, and that's not. I don't blame them, quite frankly. I mean, last season I didn't blame a lot of the players for looking as disinterested as they did down the stretch, and this year, I mean, they've traded away a lot of their best players. It's a scenario where they are going into the final 7 games of the season with 1 win in their last 8, and I don't really think it matters who their opponent is right now. And I get it goes back to the start of the year with them not playing well against these bad teams. They're not a good team. I mean, I get that they have good players, but the players that they have, the teams below them have players like that. It is a foundational thing where they just don't have the elite guys. And some of the teams below them do have elite guys. Like, it's just
even Anaheim tonight, like Zellweger was unbelievable. 3 helpers. Assists 4, 5, and 6 of his NHL career. That's 1 of 3 defensemen of the year they have in their system from the Canadian Hockey League. That's the O, the W, and the Q. All the CHL leagues. They have the defenseman of the year last year. That's incredible.
Well, and yeah, I mean, it's the problem probably is the defense. I mean, this team is not icing an NHL defense.
No, they have 2.5 defensemen. I think we're still trying to figure out what Shillington is without Chris Tanev.
Yeah.
And with him, he looked like a top 4.
Sure.
But that's frankly what made Chris Tanev so bloody special, is you could plug someone in next to him, let them roam around, and he'd hold the fort to dumb it down a ton. He hasn't looked like a top 4 since the deadline, and they've separated him and Rasmus Anderson. They had Rasmus playing with Joel Hanley, who left tonight's contest and didn't return. That means Nikita Ahochuk is probably on his way back in for their next contest if he can't go. Hanley, Pahal are both waiver claims. Miramanov, 29 games in his last 3 years in the NHL and a serious injury. These are guys. They're just, what are you? Let's take a look. We'll give it a try. These are not established NHL defensemen.
I got a bit of heat on Twitter recently for saying the Flames have a big log jam on defense. And I think it's true. I didn't mean to say it in a way that they have a good log jam on defense. They've just got a ton of bodies.
Yeah, I would say they have a log jam of 5, 6s, and 7s.
Oh my God.
Right?
And I mean, I'm planning on doing a Q&A with Jeremy Poirier soon. And I think he's a guy who has a lot of potential to supplant a lot of these guys, jump over them.
Potentially, yeah.
But they've got 15 guys who you could see being in the lineup next season. Like,
I look at the third pair, and I think it's going to be incredibly competitive.
Sure.
And I would think you're probably going to have a third pair where you can pick the kind of traits and skills that you want to build around. The challenge is they're probably, without a significant ad in trade or free agency, they're going to have to play someone in the top 4 that does not belong in an NHL top 4. And they might have to play 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense for the Flames to be adding any more defensemen at this point. They've got way too many as is. The only way that they would have to do it is by sending one the other way.
In a trade, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the reason why I could see them prioritizing defense at this year's draft, because
they don't have a top 4 prospect in their system in my mind. Maybe Bristevich, and I sort of see him and Poirier as guys that on a contending caliber team look like 4 or 5s that can run a power play.
Yeah, I think they could be better than that, but it's something where they don't have that blue chip guy.
Yeah, and it's not a guarantee those guys are top 4. Yeah. Not that we're talking anything's a guarantee, but the profile is one where maybe it's top 4.
I could see,
but they don't have the top 10 in the draft caliber blue chip guy where you're like, he's a hard top pair guy. They don't have one of those in the system.
I could see Hunter Brustevich being pretty good with the right
Yeah.
partner. It's just a matter, like I could see him being a TJ Brody type guy. And that was a guy who was a 2-3 for a long time.
Yeah, he
and
was
debatably a 2. Like
him and Giordano for a
yeah.
couple of years there. There was talk they could be on Team Canada at a major event.
If there had been an Olympics, they probably would have been.
Yeah.
But it's something where you look at the defensemen available in this year's draft, and I would imagine they'll be salivating over the potential of getting a guy like a Sam Dickinson, who is fantastic with the London Knights. The comparable that I keep hearing with him is Alex Pietrangelo.
That's
and
a good,
that is
good comp.
That's one heck of a comp. But there's so many defensemen.
It seems like there's 5 that most mocks have going in the top 10, and that doesn't include Carter Yakimchuk, who may go in the top dozen to 15, depending, a little more polarizing prospect there. But it's a very heavy on defense top end of the draft.
Yeah. And I mean, we could go on and on and on about this, and I'm sure we will a lot down the stretch about who and where they will pick. And if they move up from the Vancouver pick, wherever that ends up being, however they approach it. But they've got no shortage of different opportunities available to them. As it stands, though, the only way that I would look at trading for a defenseman is if you can say, go get a guy like Ben Sherratt and get paid to take him.
Yeah,
something like
asset
that.
collecting.
Yeah, I mean, and Detroit has got about 5 guys like that who are on awful deals.
Okay, so I'll push back a little on that, and this is big picture stuff. If people really want to talk about the Ducks and Flames tonight, I'm so sorry, but I think this is what probably has
far more
attention, because it's like, oh man, if with that win, they're now only they're not getting in, guys. They're not getting in. A loss is going to increase their stock heading into the lottery. So, which of these guys would be on waivers of the competitive club next year? Ahochik, Pahal, Hanley, Miramanov. Who of those wouldn't be put on waivers by like a Vegas type team?
Wouldn't?
Yeah.
Probably Miramanov, and that's it. And the reason that I would say Miramanov is because, and I've mentioned this on the show before, the reason I believe that Miramanov Prahal was put on waivers to begin with is because Vegas was getting Miramanov back from injury. So they kept him, and then they ended up trading him. But
so when you tell me there's a logjam on defense, I'm just like, there's a glut of 6, 7, 8s. There's not a glut of NHL defensemen. So if you have to lose a Hanley and a Pahal and a Hochik on waivers, I don't care.
That's true.
You found NHL defensemen that are better than them if you're doing that.
The problem is you're probably not losing them.
Well, and then it's not a problem again. None of them are making any money that would worry you to put in the A.
Yeah, I'm
you might be talking about AHL playing ice time, but I'm talking about the NHL roster.
No, I understand that.
Like if you could add a top 4 guy or 2 of them, that's really what this team needs to do in the next 2-3 years.
The organization is full, and it is something where if they do that, they need to start shifting around some of their capital, because they are deathly short on forward prospects, and they've got a ton of defense prospects. So it's something where,
and you're graduating Pelche and Coronado in that conversation.
Yeah. Well, even with them down there, they have no forward prospects, and it's something where, and that's not even intended as disrespect. There are players down there who could be NHLers.
Yeah. Cole
Cole Schwint could be a fourth line guy down the line. There are Adam Klapka, who knows, but there are no, as it stands right now, you can say whatever you want about Pelche, Coronado. Beyond that, there's no impact forward prospects in this organization.
Yeah. And what about next year? Hanzik and Lipinski?
Lipinski's a Parker Bell type guy. And,
third line center, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Okay. But it's like, but you look at the Flames farm system when it was at its most robust, and it was.
When was that?
2016-ish, 2017.
Who would have been in the mix there?
Mangiapane was in there. You had Dylan Dubé in there. You had
Anderson would have been down there. Shillington.
I think Marcus Granlund was just about to be traded at that point for Hunter Shinkaruk, who was, at that point considered a prospect. Yeah. They still had the 2 guys that they had drafted at the end of the 2013 first round, neither of whom panned out.
That would have been
Poirier and Klimchuk.
Yeah.
But you're not even looking in this organization right now at guys like Poirier and Klimchuk, who are guys who look like okay AHL second round, who still have the pedigree of being that first round pick. Those guys aren't even there.
Yeah. That's your Coronado, Pelche. Those are picks in the 20s.
Yeah. But those were slightly higher picks, but Coronado was at least. But you're looking at guys like Rory Cairns, who I like. The AHL coaching staffs over the years haven't really seen eye to eye necessarily in terms of giving him regular playing time. He's been a healthy scratch at times this year. He was in the ECHL last year. And that, to me, looking down there, beyond those 2 guys, is probably the highest upside forward prospect they have.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's really tough. So they got lots of areas to improve upon, but they also need that top defenseman.
Yeah. Yeah. And I haven't focused a lot on the AHL roster in the sense that if you can make a move that helps your NHL roster.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the AHL is. It's a shitty league to coach in because you get your best players taken away from you, and you get given people with bruised egos that think they're NHLers that have to check their shit out at the door, or it sucks.
That's why they need those picks.
Yeah.
And that's why they are going to make a lot of picks in the next 3 years, because they need to replenish that badly.
Good night in the out-of-town scoreboard. Let's take a quick peek at what happened around the NHL tonight. As we saw Habs win over the Florida Panthers. I did not have that on the bingo card, although you never really know. There's always a bunch of Habs fans down in Florida this time of year. I think Montembeault was in net tonight, if I'm correct. He's a former Panther.
That's right.
For whatever reason, it just things were happening tonight for Montreal against Florida. That's a big win. Ottawa could not hold on.
No.
They were in one. These are teams that the Flames find themselves before tonight's action 5 points ahead of and 3 points ahead of, respectively. The win for Montreal moves them within 3 of the Calgary Flames, and they would pick 6th and 7th, Ottawa and Montreal, in whatever order the tiebreak sets them in at this point. Those were good results. You saw the Penguins get a win. They're finding some distance between themselves and the Flames. And Buffalo got a big upset win, which was huge because they came into tonight's action tied with the Flames at 500, having played 2 more games and have 2 more points. Flames lose. Buffalo gets a big win. 6-2?
Yeah, over Washington.
Over Washington, who should be fighting for their playoff lives at this point. That's a great night in the inverse standings. And you couple that with the Flames blowing a 2-1 lead at one point in this hockey game. And yeah, not a bad night at the office for the draft lottery balls.
It's fantastic, and it gives them so much potential for what they can do. Because if they have their heart set on a guy in that top 5, 6, and he ends up dropping, and they aren't concerned about the teams below them picking him, they can even have the potential to move back, or they can move up.
Yeah,
they've got lots of different options, and so the lower that they finish, I mean, I get people don't like cheering for losses. I don't like cheering for losses, but
cheer for better players in the draft.
That's sort of what you got to. That's sort of what it comes down to.
I feel like everyone's like, "Oh man, geez, this is tough." And it's like, is it tough? These have been entertaining games. They're still working hard. They haven't quit. Like this isn't like watching last year's veteran club say bleep you to Sutter and just throw it in neutral. They've had leads. They still fight when they're down. You're getting to see a bunch of young kids. And at the end of the day, if they're 1 or 2 goals short, you're like, shit, they're going to get a better player at the draft. They keep doing this. You might get a guy that can slide into your lineup next year. You get into that top 5. Who knows?
I think the really nice thing about this year's Flames team is they are light on underperformers, which is,
yeah.
I mean, last year's Flame team was rife with them.
Yeah.
Almost everybody on the team was, I mean, save for Tyler Toffoli and I don't even know who else. Kadri at times.
Kadri's okay.
It was like, but you weren't getting any individual value out of these
players. You had a miserable year from Markstrom. You had a miserable year from most of your offensive players. Huberdeau had the largest drop in NHL history, season over season in points. And this year, really, what we're talking about in terms of the slumps is like, it's been a tough year for Rasmus Andersson, but not awful.
Yeah.
Been a very tough year for Anna Mangiapane. That's 2 in a row on those, and the stock has to be close to a low since he established himself as a top 9 forward, given his salary and his contractual status 1 year away from UFA. But other than that, like, you've had great goaltending. You've got a monster year from Mackenzie Weegar. You've shown that Zeri, Pospisil are NHL players. Kadri looks re-energized. It's been better from Huberdeau in a sense.
Yeah.
And you found Sharangovich and Kuzmenko that are looking, not career years for Kuzmenko, but certainly for Sharangovich.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think the biggest thing is the overall value of the roster. To me, at least, it feels like last year you were looking at the state of the team at the end of the season and just saying, where are the positives?
Yeah.
Which players on this roster had any value?
Mm-hmm.
And you've already gotten value for players like Elias Lindholm in a trade that is looking like
heist.
Steal. You're driving down the road in the white Bronco trying to get away. I mean, that's just an absolute.
That wasn't stealing. That was murder. But okay.
That's true. That's true. But it's. I mean, they kind of murdered them on that deal. 5 pieces for one, and the better piece. I mean, the better piece out of the 2 players that were exchanged out of the NHL. The Flames got that piece too.
It looks like it at this point. And the Vancouver Canucks will say, we don't care what Elias Lindholm looks
do it
now.
In the playoffs.
Yeah, have a couple series where you're dominant, and who knows where the chips may fall. But it's been a rough go for Lindholm. And any thought that he was pouty here, which I heard a lot of on the other show. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But shouldn't he be happy in Vancouver? If pouting was the problem, it isn't fixed.
Yeah.
It looks like it wasn't the problem, to be fair. It looks like a guy that just isn't as impactful as he was 2 years ago.
The best trades are win-wins. They don't have to be zero-sum equations.
Sure.
And I think no matter what happens with Lindholm, you're already looking at a win on the Flames side of things. So
Yes.
you are looking at the Flames having already done what people feared that they might not do,
Right.
which was hold on to these guys.
Imagine
Try
if
to make
you
a
had
run.
extended Lindholm at the number he wanted.
It would have been an absolute disaster.
And now you're locked into this aging group of 3 centers where you'd have Lindholm deep into his 30s. You've already got Kadri and Backlund deep into their 30s. Backlund on shorter term because he's older. But this is your 2 of 7 for Nazem Kadri, and he's been great. But you don't want to be a bunch of fossils down the middle and be a bad team. That just handcuffs you.
It would be creating more work for themselves down the line. It would just be you're signing Elias Lindholm to a 7-year deal to kick the can down the road 3 years and try to trade him then.
Yeah.
And you're probably not getting as much value.
No.
So they've done a good job with that. They have largely rated their roster out of their more troublesome obligations. They don't have to worry about that.
Most of them.
They're now at the point where Huberdeau and Kadri are the anchors, and Kadri to me isn't an anchor.
He's fine right now. Yeah.
He's fine. You could trade him to Colorado in the summer, and you probably get good value for him. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, the term's concerned. The salary, he's earning his money. There's no problem with this play.
Retain it down to $5 million, and I bet McKinnon's knocking on McFarland's office and saying, "Do it now."
Maybe.
Probably is. And it's the same with Weegar. He's having a great year. You could probably trade him if you wanted to. Now, they're not going to do that. And there's really no impetus for them to do that at this point. They need to have a team.
Yeah.
And they can get value for the other guys they have. But in terms of the state of this organization 12 months ago compared to now, it's night and day.
It really is. Someone had tweeted it, I want to say a month or so ago. It was less than 2 years ago, the Flames and Oilers met in a Battle of Alberta playoff series.
Yeah.
There are 3 skaters, 2 defensemen left from that roster.
But yeah,
you
3
had
forwards. Yeah.
The old Backlund line, which was Mangiapane, Backlund, and Coleman. And Mangiapane didn't play tonight, so 2 skaters there. And you had Rasmus Anderson and Oliver Shillington.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
wild.
stark. It is stark.
How quickly things turned around.
That's how it works.
Less than 2 years ago.
That's how it works.
That is that. Whew.
That's
different looking team, different looking roster, and Craig Connor's fingerprints are suddenly all over it, and more decisions coming this summer. Let's take a look at the road ahead. We do that for our good friends at Village Honda. They're located in the Northwest Auto Mall and online at villagehonda.com. New in-stock inventory on ground, as well as, you're looking for pre-owned vehicles, as many as 90 on site and access to nearly 500 within their dealer group. Whatever you're looking for, whatever your make, your model, your budget, they've got something for you. Village Honda. Let your automotive adventures begin there. What is the road ahead, Mr. Gould?
Well, eventually the Flames will need a Honda passport to get across the border for their California road trip next week. Village Honda, I will take some
shovel,
take a commission for that one. But the road ahead, the Flames do have to head out of Calgary. They'll have to drive to Winnipeg, I think, for their game on Thursday.
Do they not fly to Grand Forks and then bus in?
That's right.
Is it Fargo?
Yeah.
Where do
then they will need their passports.
That's
there
right.
You go. There you go. Thursday, Flames taking on the Winnipeg Jets. That's a team that's mired in a bit of a slump. Sean Monahan's doing well.
He is,
but the Jets are falling down. They need to get a new defense contractor in there.
The Jets have as many former Flames from that Battle of Alberta series in their lineup on Thursday as the Flames did tonight.
Man, can you list them?
Toffoli and Monahan.
That's There you go.
Tonight it was Backlund and Coleman.
You got to put an asterisk with Monahan. He wasn't playing, but he gave the big hug to.
That's right. He was hurt. Okay.
Johnny Gaudreau after that little big win. One of
many seasons ended by injury here at the end for Sean Monahan. Good to see him playing well.
He's over 50 points now, which is great. And
a free agent this summer.
Free agent this summer. Who knows what happens? I personally wouldn't object to bringing him back, but I don't think that's in the cards. Who knows?
I wonder what the market will be for him.
Yeah.
Because he's not a 200-foot centerman.
No.
But he's become good again at the thing that's the hardest to do, which is score goals in the NHL. He's been great on a power play. Ding. And if you want to build a line that gets floated in the O-zone and ask them to create some offense and put them on a power play, like that checks a lot of boxes, but I just don't anyone in free agency for the Flames the next couple summers, it's all going to be about what's the dollar, what's the term. It can't be a outbid other GMs. It has to be hey, why are people sleeping on this guy? This could work, and maybe we flip him. Like that's what Montreal did. They re-signed him as a free agent and flipped him at the deadline.
Centers are tough because we were talking off mic because the wingers don't get very much in free agency. Centers do.
Yeah.
And the 2 big signings off the top of my head last year's free agency were JT Compher and Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And both centers, both teams looking to strengthen down the middle. Monahan, not dissimilar to O'Reilly in a sense, where people thought he might be cooked after his stint in Toronto. Had a rough year, was decimated by injuries. Ends up having a really nice year with Nashville this year, and he's on a 4-year deal with the Predators. So it's something where, I wouldn't sign Sean Monahan to 4 years. I would sign him 2 years.
Yeah.
And I would sign him. I don't even care about the money. The money's not really a problem for this Flames team. They've got lots of money.
Cap space,
but the term, it's all about the term. So do you try and give Sean Monahan that Dmitry Orlov type contract with Carolina, give him 2 years big money, or who knows?
That is a way to do free agency that's unique. You understand it's an overpay. You get the guy you want, and you bring him in to mentor young people or to fill a role that you just don't have anyone to do. And you say, this isn't what a contender should pay. But we are swimming in cap space. It's the guy we want. So we'll see. We got hung up on Winnipeg.
That's right.
After they bust from Winnipeg to the nearest airport and then get out of Winnipeg, they return home for Edmonton. Last Battle of Alberta coming up Saturday.
That's right. Hockey Night Canada. It'll be a good one. Flames Oilers. If memory serves, the Flames defeated the Oilers last time.
They did.
They met, and
they played it pretty tough outside of the crappy outdoor game, because the one in Edmonton in January,
it was tight.
It was a game-winning goal from behind the goal line, off a stick, then the glove tip and a post and in.
Yeah, I quite frankly, Pinder, I have memory hold that game. I've memory hold most of this season.
Not a bad move. You can save some of that RAM or storage there for more important things.
You get the processor, you get the gigahertz, but it'll be an 8 p.m. puck drop on Saturday here at the Saddledome. It should be a good one. I mean, you never want to see them lose to the Oilers. I think that's a night where Team Tank can go on a bit of a protest, just, try and get them the win.
If there's one win in the remaining, what do they got? 8 left?
Something like that. You can count on it 2 hands.
Game 74 tonight. Yeah. If there's 8 games left and they have to win one, because Team Tank would say lose them all, let's just make it the Oilers. That's fine.
Yeah, of course. There's nothing wrong. There is nothing ever wrong with beating the Edmonton Oilers. And I think even the most ardent, strident Team Tank supporter would say that.
Yeah, 1-7. That's fine, guys. Yeah. Just make sure you beat the Oilers. It's a very, very, very simple ask.
After Saturday against the Oilers, they got 2 days off. One of those will be a travel day down to beautiful San Jose, California. They might fly into San Francisco. Who knows? They got a game on the 9th against the Sharks at the Shark Tank. I imagine the attendance for that one will be about 5,500.
That's exciting. Yeah, wow.
They've had a real rough go with their attendance this season.
It's a California road swing, and it's the last back-to-back of the season, I believe, is Kings Ducks. That's in that order. Is that right?
11th, 12th. It'll be in LA and then in Anaheim. For me, I would imagine they'll start Wolf against the Sharks and the Kings. Just makes some sense to me. Okay. You're going to have to go 2 sides of the back-to-back either way, and he grew up Jonathan Quick fan, and he's from the area around San Jose, so I see that making some sense.
Yeah, that is actually a very good point. He absolutely is playing the Sharks game.
Yeah, why not? And if you're going to go Kings Ducks, I mean, you just played Markstrom against the Ducks. I don't know what you're going to do against that game, but it'd be fun to see him play against the Kings. He grew up a Kings fan.
All right, so it is Winnipeg on Thursday. It will be Pike and Kent on Thursday Afterburner. Saturday, we got the In the Dome boys for a boozy Saturday night Battle of Alberta. That feels right for the fellas late on a Saturday. And then it's off to California for the 3 games in 4 nights swing. Sharks, Kings, and Ducks. That the road ahead for Village Honda. Village Honda has a huge selection of used vehicles, all makes, all models, all budgets. Also, all new vehicles are priced at MSRP. VillageHonda.com and located in the Northwest Auto Mall. I want to do a little Hungry for More. That is for DoorDash tonight. I'm going way off the board tonight, something I haven't done all year for Hungry for More. If you have not figured out what DoorDash is and have not used DoorDash, have we got a treat for you. Install the app, and on your first order, enter promo code NATION25. You get 25% off your order and free delivery on orders over $15. DoorDash isn't just restaurants. It's groceries, flower stores, pharmacies, anything you need. Just stay at home. Let DoorDash do the driving. That's the beauty of it, and it can be dropped off at your front door. Contact less delivery is the default setting if you like that. Sounds good. Nation25. The promo code. Are you particularly hungry for more of anything you saw tonight? I know there's a few obvious places to go.
Man, it's tough. I mean, I guess I'm hungry for more of the Kadri Kuzmenko line. It's a combination that works well.
And Pospisil's a big part of that as well.
That's the other thing, too. Like we were talking off mic about Marty Pospisil, because he's a guy who is a late bloomer. He's another guy who we don't really know what he will be. He's a guy who has captured the attention of a lot of the fan base this year. He's been a fan favorite, very Michael Furlan-like in terms of, his intensity, but he's more versatile and
not nearly as big, to be fair.
No, that is true.
He's about 40 pounds lighter.
Yeah, but some of the same, he's had the health problems as well. And now, but I'm really curious to see what they do with Pospisil and Zary, because this is maybe what I'm hungry for more of, because their center situation is still kind of fraught. And something that not a lot of people might know about Marty Pospisil is he was a very good center in the American League with the Stockton Heat and later the Calgary Wranglers. He didn't play a lot in the American League because he kept getting hurt.
Yeah.
But when he did, he was playing center and he did a really good job. He's a responsible forward, especially in the AHL level. I would love to see him get some reps at center down the stretch, because he's a guy who, if he can turn into a defensively responsible 3-4 line center, I don't know what his ceiling is as a winger. It's just kind of interesting. Like, I don't think Marty Pospisil is a foundational player for this franchise necessarily.
Yeah.
But he's a guy who, if you can find the right spot for him, I'd be really hungry to see more of that.
Well, and it seems wherever he ends up, and it's been mostly this season with Kadri and Zary, that line seems to buzz. And it's like Michael Backlund used to say it about Matthew Tkachuk when he was young in this league and before he'd established himself as a star. And we started to see some good offensive numbers, but it was not, look at that, 40 goals, 100 points type stuff. When you're playing on that line, you can't help but get dragged into the battle. On nights where maybe it's a little bit flat and you're going out there and you're doing your thing, a scrum after the whistle, whether you like doing that or not, you have to, it can't do anything but engage you in the game. It brings up your emotions. That, and bringing that element to a game is a very, very unique skill that only a few players have. Marty has become one of those guys around the league that has the ability to do that. And I like your comment about him and Zary, because it's worked very well, those two flanking Kadri, but it doesn't mean that has to look like that. They could all three of those guys could be on different lines, adding what they do to groups around them, because I'm starting to feel like Kadri can drive a line. Maybe Pospisil and Zary have some components that help others around them better. You don't have to have all those eggs in the same basket.
You know who was a sort of a rough and tumble guy who, it was a bit of a late bloomer, came to the Flames in the year before they went to the Cup final, was played center, ended up being here for 6 years and kind of had that same offensive upside, 25 points. Stefan Yell.
Yeah,
that's an interesting kind of comparison that I'm thinking of. If you can turn Marty Pospisil into a depth center, I think there can be something really there for a long time.
And again, we talk a lot about it. Center depth is yikes. So
it's not good.
If he slides down the middle, that changes the way you look at everything. Interesting stuff there. So hungry for more. You want a little more of Pospisil in different spots in the lineup? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's hard to quantify at this point. There's a lot of
you just want more
parts.
Marty.
Just want more Marty.
He's driving lines, man.
I like that Marty guy. He's
impressive.
He's good.
I'm going to go way out of left field and pick a guy on the other team. Owen Zellweger. You just keep doing you, buddy. It's not a lot of hockey and a lot of results, and one of a very, very impressive young stable of defensemen for the Anaheim Ducks. And he helped hand the Flames a higher lottery odds today. Thank you, Owen.
He is an adventure, but I like him.
Tell me about him. Like, I think we all know he comes in with a lot of pedigree and a highly drafted, coveted guy. But like, what do you see his NHL career looking like? That's kind of a tough question, but
I think
stylistically and where he plays.
So he wears number 51. And he's a small 5'9", 5'10" defenseman. And, he's had a better start to his career. He was drafted, which this other guy wasn't. But Troy Stecher, with a bit more offense.
That's a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, a lot more.
I love Troy. He's a good guy. But
Troy, I mean, yeah, you look at
Troy's
Troy
defense
Stecher,
first.
Yeah, he's a defense first guy. And that's something Zellweger's really got to work at. But, the way that he moves around the ice, he's fearless. And that's the big thing with Stecher is he jumps into any fray that he gets into.
Yeah.
Now, with Zellweger, if he can take a couple cues from Stecher in terms of the way that he defends, I mean, this is a guy who, with the Everett Silvertips, played with Dustin Wolf back in the day. And,
sure.
He was quite dynamic. He was a big draft favorite by a lot of people. He ended up falling into the second round. But he's a really interesting part of that defense. Now, it's something where in Anaheim, I really like Pavel Menchikov. They have Jackson Lacombe. They have Urho Vakanainen. Not sure they have that number one guy for the future. That might be Menchikov, but we'll see. But with Zellweger,
nice stable.
If he goes on the right on the right pairing with the right guy, I mean, put him with Radko Gudas for a little while and just let him cook with those two together. I mean,
that'll make up your pairing weights and
Yeah.
heights. Radko's a large human.
Yeah, he's a Calgary boy. You can't help but cheer for guys.
And I've been calling him Owen. It's Olin.
Olin. Yes, Olin Zellweger. He's got the W in the second name. Yeah, there you go.
The more you know.
There you go.
Yeah, and he did slide at the second round. Okay, there you go.
34th overall.
He's done some things. He's got two-time world junior gold medalist.
Yeah, I think he
gold
played
at the
with
under
Wolf.
18s and all kinds of CHL and U20 accolades. That's nice pedigree for 5'9", 175. That's actually pretty stout for his height.
The Ducks have always been good with defensemen. I mean,
That's
you go
true.
back to when they had Cam Fowler and Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson.
Vatanen.
Sammy Vatanen. But, I think they were really hinging a lot of their hopes on
Montour.
on Jamie Drysdale.
Yeah.
They picked.
Yeah.
And then they ended up flipping him for Cutter Gauthier. So it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this year's
Yeah.
draft. That's a team. Sam Dickinson, who's a name who I would love to follow to the Flames. I doubt he gets past Anaheim.
Interesting. And Anaheim looks like a top 3 pick at this
Yeah.
point. Okay. So there's your Hungry for More. Again, the promo code Nation25. First time Door Dashers love it. Groceries, pharmacies, flower stores, and more. And of course, restaurants, which you probably know. 25% off your first order and free delivery over $15. Offer valid in Canada only. Terms and conditions apply.
That's right. Yeah.
We'll take a break. We'll come back with your questions and comments. This has been a very big picture. Not a lot of talk on the Game Tonight show. Do you want more show on the Game Tonight? Do you want more show on what the hell are they looking at if they can pick in the top 10 of the draft?
Tell us.
TJ Ginla, defenseman, free agency, who you trading, who you re-signing. It's all on the table with your questions and comments coming up on Afterburner.
We are well into the winter months now, and you can feel it, can't you? That urge to get away. Maybe some beach time to warm up those bones of yours. Maybe a hockey, sports kind of road trip. Well, when you pack your bags, make sure you don't forget Alberta Blue Cross. There's only one thing better than sharing memories, and that's making new ones. Alberta Blue Cross Travel Insurance protects your memories and more, wherever travel takes you. Visit ab.bluecross.ca/travel for more information. Alberta Blue Cross, celebrating life's memorable moments inspired by hockey.
Hey guys, it's Pinder. Chatting about Charm Diamond Centers. Did you know that Charm's been Canadian owned and operated since 1972? And there's over 85 locations coast to coast to coast with Charm and their sister brands. Get this now. You want to get something custom made? How about custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks? That's unreal. That is the Charm Masterpiece program, and they've got unbeatable pricing policies as well. Whether it's mine diamonds or Canadian lab-grown diamonds, check them out. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. That's charmdiamondcenters.com.
All right, gang, listen up. It's time to learn the pro pose. Coach?
Bend and snap.
Beautiful form. Nice arm extension. Facial expression, could use some work. All right, let's see it. The pro pose. What's that guy doing?
I think that's the bend and snap.
That's a whole different deal. Charm, home of the pro pose.
The only thing sweeter than the taste of victory is starting your day with the new Cinnabon Pull-Apart from Wendy's. But there's no reason you can't have both now that Wendy's and Daily Face-Off Fantasy are giving you a chance to win weekly prizes all season long. And hey, even if you make a few wrong picks, at least you know you're heading to Wendy's right now for a $5 Cinnabon Pull-Apart and a small coffee. It's a great choice. Sign up for the Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool sponsored by Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Let's get back to the hockey talk. Afterburner returns. I want to tell you about a new ritual that I have, and I suppose it's not that new. It's probably been about 6 months. My wife got me to do it. Every morning, I take a single scoop, I place it in a canister, I fill it with water, I shake it up, and my day is off to the races. I'm off to a good start. The first time I tried AG1, I was not sure what this was going to taste like, this green thing, but I actually quite enjoy the flavor. And I can tell you it's absolutely a daily ritual that I've come to enjoy. And I feel very good about, I feel healthy. I don't worry about my health. I don't worry about lack of sleep. I don't worry about, oh my gosh, did I miss eating 3 square meals? Did I get all the food? I don't worry about that stuff. What is AG1? It's a foundational nutrition. So vitamins, probiotics, it helps support immune, brain, and gut health. And AG1 is always striving to be better. Since 2010, 52 improvements they've made. Wow. So they're just never satisfied, always making it better. Look, life's busy. It's crazy. I know if I've started my day with AG1, I'm feeling a lot better about any of the chaos that comes up, which tends to be a lot with, barn burner and post-game shows and twin 8-year-old boys and dealing with Mike Gould on post-game shows and things like that. If you're curious about what's in AG1, well, it's basically the best stuff. We're talking no gluten, no dairy, no GMO products, no nuts. We're talking no lactose, no animal byproducts, no eggs, just good stuff for you. So hearty endorsement from me and my wife, who is always way healthier than me and the positive, healthy influence in my life. Big fans every day. It's like, okay, I can deal with the screaming and the chaos and the breakfast and the making of the lunches once I get the AG1 in, and then we're good to go. And if you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. You could try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/afterburner. That is drinkag1.com/afterburner. Check it out. I enjoy it. And you know what I'll be doing tomorrow at about 7:10 a.m.?
Making some more.
Drinking some more AG1, baby.
Of course.
Drinkag1.com/afterburner. Again, for that free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs.
You look good. It's taking away the bags under the eyes a little bit.
Oh, it has nothing to do with the burning on the nose of the face. That's not wearing sunscreen. So it won't help with that.
Does it make your hair grow faster?
I have not noticed that.
I think I have.
We could do some measuring and we'll see. We have to have a controlled test experiment. So I would have to do hair growth over time without AG1 and then do it with and measure. It's a lot of work. I don't know that I'm up to it, Mike. I just know that I feel better with it.
See if it fixes Boomer's eyesight to the point where he takes off those sunglasses indoors.
I have lower hopes on that, but it doesn't mean that he can't also have things that support his gut, immune, and
Dean needs it.
Brain health as well.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Back to Afterburner we go. And comments and questions time.
Get them in.
We also have an event coming up we're going to tell you about in a bit, but let's start with a few questions. Jacko, get us going, buddy. Mangiapane as good as gone. I mean, you could bring Andrew Mangiapane back. You do have a glut of wingers, but you also might go to market and say, hey, we think Andrew's worth X. And teams like, no. Okay, but we'll eat half the money. Like, no. It is certainly dependent on the return, but I'm thinking if you can get a third or more, you probably have to consider it. It's just that they're not in cap issues, the Flames, next year. The type of team that might want to add a Mangiapane doesn't probably have $5.8 million for that slot. It's not going to be a fun transaction because you probably would have got a haul 2 years ago coming off 34, 35 goals, whatever it was. You might just have to plug your nose and say, change the scenery, get what you can get, and you're making room for Pelche.
Yeah, he needs a new look. And it's just a matter of how it happens. And I take Craig Conroy's statements at face value. He said last year that he doesn't want to let guys walk for nothing. And that should apply to Andrew Mangiapane.
Sure does.
After next year.
Yep.
He's making an unwieldy number in terms of his cap hit.
Yeah.
They have the option to retain those 3 slots reset on July 1st. They can retain up to 3 guys.
Only retaining on Tanev and Hannafin, if I'm correct.
Yeah, but
both those guys are UFAs, and so their contracts expire, and all 3 retention slots are open.
Yeah. So and when you look at it, this year or next year is unlikely to be as traumatic a sell-off as this year was. So
for the Flames, or
okay.
Flames.
They're only
3 forwards.
Who else are they going to sell? Right? Like they have Sharon Govich, they have Kuzmenko. Maybe they sell, and Mangiapane. Of those first 2 guys, maybe they trade one, but I don't think it's a guarantee that they move one of those guys. I don't think it's a guarantee that they really prioritize it as something that they might even consider doing it in the summer.
Yeah.
Whereas with Mangiapane, I can see them maybe thinking that way, thinking if there's somebody who will take this guy off our hands, it's not even a case of not wanting Andrew Mangiapane on the team. It's just a case of, when is the value going to be at its highest? Are you going to get more trading with the trade deadline? I don't really know.
And I just think it's the value of those minutes he's eating.
Yeah, that too.
And I just would love to see Jacob Pelcha on the left side of Coleman and Backlund and say, okay, like, is that not one of the best places to nurture a young player? We've seen it so many times in the last decade and a half where you slide a younger player, a struggling player, or someone trying to find their feet onto Backlund's line. And it's like, okay, now they have a chance to blossom and they're going to learn the defensive side of the puck. Like, it's just Andrew Mangiapane in that slot, which is one of the what's the right word? Like the cushiest spots in that forward group. The left side on that line hasn't done a lot with it. And I think Andrew's a great human, and I really am fond of a lot of the things he's been able to accomplish in his career. He reeks to me of a guy going somewhere else, getting a different look with different teammates, and getting back to getting his nose dirty front of the net, 25 goal self. I think that's still there for him.
He's a guy who plays his best when there's something to play for, and these Flames have nothing to play for. Next year's going to be probably close to 82 games that don't have a whole lot of meaning.
Yeah, I remember that goal he scored against Dallas, and when it felt like
snipe.
that series was teetering.
Holy moly! Comes across the line, just winds up and goes crossbar down. But yeah, he's a guy who plays his best when he has something on the line, and right now there's nothing on the line in Calgary. So you
see him land in a place like
Nashville,
Colorado, Boston, Nashville. Like, just put him on a second or third line with a little more skill and watch him come back to life. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think the Flames would be happy to say that. Look, like, we can. It's not a shoot. We didn't sell high on Andrew Mangiapane. We're getting a good look now at Pelche in the slot, or at the end of the year, look, we're going to put Hansig up in that line for a month. I mean, I'm not saying that's a likely scenario, but they just have too many wingers.
The other thing that I can think of, and I don't even know if this has any basis, but if you're looking at the Flames as being a team that is maybe in the market to take on bad contracts, I can see there being a push from higher up to say, okay, if we're going to take on this money, we need to clear out some money. Now, they have spent to the cap in the past. They have not really had a season like the one that they're about to have, where they have that incentive to finish bottom 10, and they have very faint hopes of being a contending team, where you don't even have the glimmer of expectation that you might get that playoff revenue. So I can see there being a thing of, well, we will take on a contract like an Oli Mata or a Ben Sherratt if we can get this $5.8 million off the books. I can see that being in play.
Yeah, I also think maybe if you're talking about a deal with retention on Markstrom and it's a big package and you're really saying, okay, we want to first plus this kid, or they say this prospect is just stacked up in the wrong depth chart and we think he can be a star in Calgary. I don't know if he's a sweetener or not, but if you eat half and make Andrew Mangiapane a $2.9 million player, I think that's a much more palatable one. And teams that are capped out that are contenders can use a guy like Mangiapane on the wing to better success than you've seen here. I was sort of daydreaming that could you take the Vancouver first rounder with Mangiapane at half retention and move up, or who's doing who the favor at Mangiapane half retained? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a similar type of player, although this guy had more value because he's a center, but it reminds me of Adam Henrique a little bit, where in the last couple of years before his final year of his contract, he was seen as a guy very much on the downswing. Anaheim gave him plum minutes, and it got to the deadline, and they were able to find a suitor in Edmonton where they retained twice. They got a third-party broker in there. Yeah. And Henrique had a pretty big ticket. They were able to get it down pretty cheap. So that's the pushback that I would have to the idea of trading him in the summer is if you wait to the deadline, you already have part of that money coming off the books just having waited. And then you can maybe involve a third team in there as well. So there's lots of different options. I don't think there's any way where Andrew Mangiapane's on this team at the start of the 25-26 season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think I would say it's better than 50-50 that one forward is moved.
I would say so
this summer. Yeah. Never mind the expiring Greer and the things like that. I'm talking top 9. It feels like they need to make room.
Big time.
Because when they're healthy, there's just not enough slots for the number of guys you'd like to see in top 9 roles. Okay. Next, Jack. Pinder and Mike. How do you guys feel about this year's zone defense? And do you miss the Sutter man-on-man defense as much as I do? I don't miss much about last year's Sutter team. I miss a lot about 2 years ago Sutter teams, really a lot. And I can't really speak to the in-zone defense, the man-to-man, you'll chase a forward or wherever he goes. The zone, you'll sort of hold the fort in front and try to hand off to a center or whatever, for example. That's not my strength to talk X's and O's like that, but safe to say it's not made them a top defensive club in the league. And, you know, with their personnel right now, I mean, they probably should be a bottom 5 to 10 defensive club in the league, and they just aren't. They're better than that. Maybe that's the goaltending they've got this year that they didn't last year. I don't know.
Yeah, they could bring Scotty Bowman out of retirement, I think, and they wouldn't
Jacques Lemaire.
They wouldn't be able to get a bottom or a top 5 defensive team out of this group.
Yeah.
And it's not an indictment on any of these players who I think all have individual value. It is just a case of they've lost so many players. I think you can stake a claim that playing this way may have opened up things for guys like Noah Hannafin to have bigger years. But
they use them on power play 1 a lot. So
yeah, but in terms of playing the defensive zone, again, like you, I'm not necessarily qualified to comment on that per se. I mean, X's and O's. I think there has to be some attention paid at some point to what is ailing Rasmus Andersson, who is another guy where you talk about the contract situation. Do you want to extend Rasmus Andersson when he's 30? And right now, I don't know if it's the system or if he's hurt or if there's anything else. But
or if it's just he sees what we see.
Yeah, it could very much be that too. So, yeah, I think the only defenseman you've got committed here long-term is Mackenzie Weegar. And I don't think there is any rush to tailor a system around any of these guys because at the end of the day, the personnel they have would be ill-suited in any system.
Yeah, and you might, just for the conversation's sake, you might have the exact same decor with similar results playing different systems. There isn't like this is the better way to do it. It's just that Vegas won with a certain style and everyone's copycatting that. It was a very different blue line in Colorado that won the year before with very different traits. So I think we all fall prey to the, oh my gosh, this team won. Everyone built a team exactly like them. It doesn't really work that way. There's a lot of different styles of team that have won cups. And I even look at just LA versus Chicago, incredibly different clubs that won cups in 5 out of 7 years in the NHL. And they couldn't have been more different. One was heavy and built on the forecheck and an elite netminder. And the other team would trade chances and had high flying finishers and very pedestrian, middle of the road at best goaltending. Like they just were super different.
No two teams in the league are the same, and that is especially true on defense. You look at the defense cores of the top teams in the league right now. You look at Vancouver versus Edmonton versus Vegas. Those 3 teams could not be more different on the defensive side of the puck. With Edmonton, they play such a smothering possession game that they're very seldom in their own zone. So you don't have a guy like Evan Bouchard who has had terrific underlying results this year. You don't have him having those opportunities to make the mistakes that he can make as often just because they're so strong possession-wise. You have a team like Vancouver with Quinn Hughes, who 20 years ago would have been laughed out of the league for being
and now he's a Norris favorite.
And now he's exactly. And it's sort of not dissimilar to Cale Makar in terms of the way that he plays. Then you look at Vegas, where they have a big, mean defensive group that harkens back to the Darryl Sutter LA Kings. So
totally.
There are so many ways to win. I'm not concerned about it. I'm not of the mind that anybody involved with this organization right now, beyond a group of 3-4 people, will be involved when they are good again. And that is,
it's true.
When you think about it, you think about where this.
Well, we just talked about the Battle of Alberta 2 years ago.
Yeah. So
never mind on the other side of the next 2 years, where you're trying to get younger and actively looking to move older players and expiring contracts out.
I go back to the transitionary years with the Flames back in the mid 2010s and just how few of those guys were still, let alone on the team in the league by the time that the Flames were getting good again. And it wasn't that many.
Next, Jack Castione. Do you think Connor can still get the same return from Markstrom this summer that he could have got at the deadline? We don't know. And I see this in the comments a lot, like, boy, the Flames better be able to get the first plus Holtz. And it was like, no one ever reported what the deal was.
Yeah.
And no one knew which pieces were involved. We have heard smoke around Alexander Holtz, who is a guy that's incredibly highly touted and seems to have a very tough time getting onto the power play, get significant minutes in that deep forward group. Hello, Igor Sharangovich scenario, just a much younger player and potentially even more talented player. And we don't know whether it was a first on the table or him or both. It could be maybe a veteran that had some term left. It might not be a young player. We don't know what that deal was. And I would say that you're not going to get as good an offer from New Jersey because they have Jake Allen there now. But what I'd also turn and say is that the LA Kings are looking like they might have a really rough end of their season. Now, maybe they win and get into the 3-hole and upset Edmonton for the first time in 3 tries. They beat them. They might have a good run. There will be teams that have goaltending let them down in this postseason and they don't meet their expectations. There will be GMs on hot seats saying, if I just could get Vezina goaltending, we could do something magical here. It doesn't have to be New Jersey. And I think everyone in this league that's a GM understands that Jacob Markstrom is a top 3 to 5 goalie in the league this year, had a miserable season last year, but is going to get some Vezina votes, and rightfully so. And that those aren't easy guys to find. If you could get the Flames to retain a little, could you imagine Markstrom at $4 million if you're the LA Kings?
He'd be a plum asset. And it is something where you can get spun into circles going on and on about deals that almost happened and didn't.
Yeah.
If you really want to feel pain, you can talk about the Flames missing out on Mark Stone and Nazem Kadri back.
Yeah.
You know, imagine how differently things would have played out. The butterfly effect. Johnny Gaudreau might still be here if Nazem Kadri becomes.
And if Johnny's still here, Kachuk might still be here. Who knows?
Yeah,
like
who the hell knows?
That game is wild.
I mean, they could have traded Mark Jankowski for Nazem Kadri and Alexander Kerfoot or whatever. Who cares? It's like who? Yeah, but I don't think this stretch of games is going to turn Jacob Markstrom into a negative asset.
No,
I think there is going to be a lot of interest around the league. I think there are going to be teams who look at Jacob Markstrom and see it a lot the way I do, in which you have a team that is being depleted, that has been ransacked, and he's playing behind them.
Mm-hmm.
I know there were a lot of people who were afraid that they didn't trade Jacob Markstrom, so they're going to be elevated back into the playoff race. I think we have been shown pretty decisively that that's not the case.
Correct.
So when it comes down to it, you can bemoan that the Flames didn't get Alexander Holtz from New Jersey if you want. The voice in my head tells me that Alexander Holtz might still be on the move from New Jersey in a separate deal. He was benched again tonight by a second head coach, Travis Green. Played, I think, like 4 minutes tonight. Played power play in the second period. That's about it.
Jeez.
And it's just a matter of, you can say all these things. At the end of the day, the grass always seems greener. You can look at the assets that other teams have and say, boy, I really wish we had gotten that guy.
Yeah.
And the fans of that team are saying, boy, I wish we could trade this guy.
Boy, I wish we got Kuzmenko as a throw-in. Boy, Sharon Govich for a guy with a year and a half left. Jeez.
It's really easy to drill these holes into your head and just say, oh, boy, what could have been? I think there is a scenario this summer where the market for Markstrom opens up exponentially. You get these GMs congregating at the draft in the Sphere in Las Vegas, getting throwing some chips down on the table and just saying, I want this guy. He's the best goalie there is.
That I can add. Yeah.
It bores me when I hear people saying, oh, well, Markstrom's value is going to be diminished because UC Soros will be on the market. No, he's not going to be on the market. He's not going to be on the market. Nashville's.
Let's say you go to Ottawa.
Yeah.
And Ottawa has to forfeit one of their next 3 first-rounders because of the trade list nonsense with Evgeny Dadonov. We'll see if the league holds them to that. I know they've threatened to do crazy things before and then backed off them, like the I believe it's the Kovalchuk cap circumvention shit. Ottawa's had massive goaltending issues, and they signed Korpisalo, which seemed idiotic at the time and has proven to be exactly that, at least in my mind's eye. I never really got it. He seemed very mid and replaceable, and they went and paid him as if he was a guy that you can't replace, which isn't going to work. If you took that contract and gave them Markstrom, would it be crazy to ask for their top 10 pick as well?
You beat me to it.
And would Ottawa be a team like, oh no, we need another top? Like, no, you've got a huge stable of great young players. Of course, one more would be great, but Jacob Markstrom's the missing piece. They don't need a guy that in 3-4 years is going to be entering his prime.
Now, I will say this. It would be hypocritical of me to say yes, because last year I was highly critical of Ottawa for trading for Jacob Chychrun. I thought it was a mistake. I thought they should not give away another pick after they had traded their previous first-round pick for DeBrincat, and then they had used their previous first-round pick on Tyler Boucher, who has 2 goals in the AHL this year.
Not ideal.
So I didn't like the Chychrun deal. A lot of people did, but I saw it as a team giving up a 12th overall pick, which that's what it ended up being. Yeah. And those picks don't move very often.
Yeah, I would liken that to the OEL deal where they just threw in the first rounder and it turns into be Gunther.
And 12th overall pick turned into Daniil But, who's had a great year in the KHL, and I'm sure Ottawa would love to have him. So it's a matter of, that one team specifically is the team where I would say no, don't do it, because Ottawa has a lot of flaws to fix in that roster.
It's also a team that's made some mistakes in trades.
It has made some mistakes.
They turned $1.80 on the DeBrincat thing.
Yeah.
If they trade Chychrun in, they're going to do it again.
Same thing.
They didn't solve their goaltending. Philip Gustafson might be the best goalie they had, and they had to eat Cam Talbot. Thought he was better and more money. Like, they just made a lot of little mistakes that have added up there, and I think that's why it's taken so long.
Well, that's why I never understood the Chychrun trade, because people were always saying, "Oh, Arizona didn't get their ask of 2 first-round picks." But they got a high first and 2 second-round picks, which to me is worth more. So that's Ottawa giving up that value. And so
Yeah.
they've already given up all this value. They get a worse first round pick back for DeBrincat when they end up flipping him. They traded away the Kevin Korchinski pick,
Yeah,
which they probably wish they didn't do.
sure.
So, I mean, if you're the Flames, I would be exuberant to get that pick from Ottawa, because then that's the pick for me I use on Tisha Gindler, which it's right. Jeez. So, but for me, taking on the Jonas Korpisalo contract would be an absolute no-brainer, because
Put him with Wolf. There you go.
And it was a case of, in Columbus, Korpisalo for a while there looked done, and then he
went to LA at the deadline.
He's a goalie.
Was okay.
He's a goalie.
Yeah.
He had a big year. He ended up having a good year. He got traded to LA for value. So I think there's a very good chance if you trade for Korpisalo, the worst case scenario is to buy him out, and the best case scenario is
He's a platoon guy.
You flip him.
Yeah.
He's a platoon guy. He ends up being what Kari Ramo was.
Sure.
So yeah, that's that for me. You beat me to the Ottawa thing.
Okay.
That's the one that makes the most sense.
I was just looking for someone in the top 10 that's like, we don't need a kid. We need a NHL goalie. And Ottawa screams it.
New Jersey, Buffalo,
LA,
we'll
see.
There's
They got
lots of
Ukko-Pekka
teams.
Luukkonen, but him and
Yeah,
Markstrom
that is
might
true.
be the perfect way to go. It's just that Levi complicates it. Anyway, very long-winded inside baseball answer.
Yeah.
And also your Arizona Coyotes undies are showing. I'm sorry about
Hey,
that.
it was a good trade. It was a good trade. Now they just need arena.
No one said it wasn't. So.
Oh, yes, they were. They were. They were
Not
definitely
right
saying
now on this
Yeah,
show.
that's
That's a backpack item. That's what I have.
Shut up, Ryan.
items. I'll shut up when you answer this next question,
Okay.
Mike. Here we go, Jack.
Let's hear it. After tonight's loss, Sharky, Hoobie, and Kuzi combined -56. What do you make of that? It's great.
Not ideal if you're trying to win. Ideal if you're trying to up your draft stock. No, plus minus is not everything, but all three of these players are weak defensive players.
Yep.
When you look sort of into the more advanced metrics, these are guys that give you almost all their value on the offensive side of the puck, and they give a lot of it back on the defensive side of the puck. And that's one of the reasons I'm a little more hesitant on the Kuzmenko extension that everyone seems to want. It's also one of the reasons I think Rick Tocchet was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need you.
Yeah.
Like I've got 3 lines of wingers that can play defense, and we have enough scoring.
Now,
I don't need a guy that's going to score twice and give up 3 at his end. That's oversimplifying it, but when they put that line together, and that's exactly where they went right after the Lindholm trade, I called it the all gas, no brakes line, because all 3 of those guys can make magic in the offensive zone and can drive you batty watching them trying to defend.
Oh, sure. And I mean, there is
Cheating
something
for
to be
offense,
said.
so to speak.
There is something to be said about combined plus minus, which is a bogus fake stat. And you have to look at that because -56. Well, a lot of those goals came with 2 of those guys on the ice at the same time.
Yes, the point being is that they're all big minus players. Yeah.
Although you can say, plus minus is so volatile. Jonathan Huberdeau was a huge plus player in his last year in Florida.
I don't love plus minus.
It's
and that's why I went right to the better defensive stuff, which is to say, by better metrics, it does still tell the story that none of these 3 players are good defensive players.
They're not players who prioritize defense.
No, and they shouldn't with their skill sets.
Yeah, and Huberdeau, when he is on the right line with the right fit, he's a player where his defensive results end up grading up pretty well because it goes back to the Edmonton thing where you have a line that is so dominant offensively that they don't really have to spend much time in the defense.
If you're in the ozone all night, don't worry about defense.
That's the best case scenario with Huberdeau. That's a scenario that you're not really looking at in Calgary as of right now. If they draft the center who ends up being the savior for this franchise and you put Huberdeau on a line with him when he's 34, maybe you get a bit of a different result.
Sure.
But as of right now, I mean, it's only a concern if you're hoping this team wins, and for a lot of people, they're not.
Okay. Very good. Let's go next. Yeah, and that's okay. Like, there's a lot of star players that have been floated ozone minutes and aren't great defenders that are in the Hall of Fame. These are not like poxes upon your family. There are a lot of very poor defensive. Like Leon Draisaitl has been one of the worst defenders in the league over the course of the last decade. It doesn't matter because he fucking scores 50 or 60 every year.
It's true. And
he's an absolute weapon on the power play. And when it's 2 minutes left and you had an empty net behind you, he's going to score more than most guys have in the last 10 years. That's the trade-off of a finisher. Which players do you think may ask for trades in exit interviews? Who would ask out? Rasmus, I don't think is unhappy, but he floated his own name in trade rumors when we didn't see them in trade rumors. I thought that was odd ahead of the deadline. I don't expect that to happen, but I am curious about where he's at. I think he wants to win, and I think his performance has been a reflection of games that this team has to play.
Generally speaking, guys ask for trades for one of 2 reasons. Either they aren't happy with their playing time or they don't like the coach. That's really
it's
that
opportunity.
kind of boils down to, and with this Flames team, Husk is probably as nice a coach as they could want,
especially given the history of last year.
Exactly. Like they've already gotten what they wanted in that respect, and they've already traded the guys who quote unquote wanted out.
Yeah.
The other part of it, who's not getting an opportunity on this Flames team?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're Mangiapane,
and he's getting plenty of opportunity. He's playing with two of the best two-way players in the league.
Well, and he's out right now, and I don't know how much of that is real ouchie versus if it was playoffs, he's playing, or hey, if they're on a bubble team, he's in the lineup. But either way, like it's just your point is well made. That if you're not getting minutes here, do you think there's more minutes waiting on a better team? Because there's not many teams lower than them in the standings.
You're getting minutes in Columbus, like you're
and maybe not even. They're young.
Yeah, like, you have to beat Alex Nylander for minutes there. Like it's a case of the Flames should be a team where if you're a player who is upset about your opportunity, you come to. You're not going away from. It's why that's
why Kuzmenko ended up here. Sure,
exactly.
Ended up here.
And it's why when you look at guys on the UFA market, which we've heard about with Frank Seravalli, them maybe being middling players in the free agent market. They're actually a team where I don't see them making subtractions so much as I see them potentially making tinkering additions where they get guys on short-term deals,
3-4D coming in,
or even another winger if they trade Mangiapane. Which and the name that I keep thinking of is Jake DeBrusk. I mean, I don't know what he's going to ask for. He's had a weird year.
Is he a U or an R?
He's a U. He's had a weird year. He's been up and down.
And it's funny with him because his name is for, I want to say like 2 of the last 4 years and maybe not even consecutive years. It's been the Jake DeBrusk would like out of. It's probably
out
better
of Boston,
that the
and
Bruins
he's wanted,
and he's still there and he's having a career year now this year.
Well, he had a career year last year. He's had a weird year this year where he started out very slow and he has come around a little bit lately, but I don't know what to make of it. And it's a case where that's the sort of thing is DeBrusk has been playing on a Boston team that has been near the top of the league, and yet he's asking out because he wants the opportunity. So if you're looking at a winger market that is tough,
it's a good example.
It's a tough winger market, right? You're looking at guys on the winger market who have had so years, getting 2-year, 3-year deals. And that's where if I'm the Flames, I'm saying, okay, we'll give you more money than you can get anywhere else. You come here for 2-3 years, we'll pump and dump you. It's sort of a similar thing with Anthony Duclair, where I could see that reuniting with John.
There's that history with Huberdeau, and he has looked a lot better since going to Tampa, which is sort of, if you were worried about him being toast, it's like, no, there's still, that's what he looked like in Florida a bit. And it might not be the exact same, but there's he's still a player in the NHL.
So going back to the question, it's not where I see a guy asking out. It's actually the opposite for me, where I can see the Flames being a haven, a sort of team for a guy who says, actually, I want more opportunity, to hell with winning so much as I want an opportunity to springboard maybe into a bigger contract. So that's where I'd be on the lookout for those middle tier free agents who want that opportunity maybe. And with a guy like DeBrusk, who I think is 27, if you sign him to that 2-3 year deal, he'll be up at 29-30. So he's still looking for a payday then.
Yeah.
Whereas
there's lots of incentive there.
Yeah. Whereas if you give him a 5-year deal, he's coming off at 32, and that doesn't make sense for either side personally. So
I agree.
It's something where I would look out for it.
I keep thinking about another defenseman just because of what I talked about at the top of the show. I don't see a logjam at defense. I see a clog from defensemen 5 through 9.
I just would want a guy.
I just see there's lots of minutes for, if someone wants to come in and be a second pair stabilizer, there's a job for you. There's no one that I've seen that can do that. Miramanov is not that to me. Pahal is not that to me. Hanley is not that to me. Ahochik is not that to me. I don't even know if Oliver Shillington is that. So it's like after Weegar and Anderson, who is a second pair defenseman out of you? And I don't know that there is one. There might be one.
I wouldn't object to them trying Matt Dumba on a 1-year deal, even though his underlyings are awful.
And he's a right shot. You can trade him at the deadline.
He's from Calgary. He ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
It's just the sort of thing where you want a guy who will eat minutes, and he will do that. It's just not a case necessarily of whether he'll do it particularly well.
Yeah.
But he's got the established reputation, which might be the valuable thing.
Yeah. And you know what? If it hurt more than it helped, it'll only increase your draft stock in a year where you probably want to keep that pick and make it a top 10 pick.
Exactly.
Let's rip through a few more, Jack. I don't know how many you have left, but we're almost at an hour and a half. I knew this would happen with Mike and I. God damn it.
Good show. Talk a lot.
Potentially. Yeah. Monty's back. Monty, how are you? Would you trade Vancouver's first for a young center that might be available? Absolutely. Yeah. Pinto or Natchez. Actually, those are both intriguing names. Pinto has come on nicely since returning from his, we're not going to tell you what happened scandal from the league.
That's right. Yeah. Who knows? think he was.
So don't do what he did, but just don't expect us to tell you what he did.
He shorted GameStop. Who knows?
I don't think that was it. No.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely in play, Monty. I don't think Craig Conroy's shown that he's horny for picks and not young players. I think this is asset management. If you're looking at pick, let's say 24 to 29 in the draft for Vancouver, and you're thinking, I kind of just see a bunch of these guys in a big box, and I think maybe in the second round we could get that same guy we like. Why wouldn't you try to flip that to a team and take advantage of a depth chart issue, which may or may not be occurring in Carolina and Ottawa? I don't think those teams are keen to get rid of those guys, but maybe there's a guy on their board that's left there and they're like, holy shit, we need this kid. I love this kid.
Yeah, it's tough for me because you're looking at an age difference with a guy like Martin Necas of 6 years versus if you draft a guy versus if you trade for that guy.
Yeah,
you're really
you're betting he has to be good when they're good again. If that player isn't good when that new rink opens, you've got the wrong type of asset.
That's the exact thing to me because I look at when they traded for Rennie Bork, and they were actually a playoff team when they did it. But, that was a guy who, when they did it, he was 26.
Yeah.
So he was 26. So
you're coming out of your prime.
And that's the tough thing. With Necas, he's not that much younger. With Pinto, he is a little bit, I think. I think he's a little bit younger than Necas. But it's something
Necas is 25.
Yeah. So it's something where you don't want to be giving up picks for guys who are those transitional pieces that I was talking about earlier. You want to get guys who can sort of help you form a core. Because for my money, the Flames don't currently have a core.
I agree. I don't know that there's a single core player here.
So that's the thing. Are you a team? Because I look at two guys who were traded last summer, Alex Newhook and Ross Colton.
Yeah.
And they're kind of traded to opposite situations where Colton is traded to Colorado, a team that's very much looking to win. Newhook's traded to Montreal. But the difference is Montreal's already got Uri Slavkovsky and they've got Cole Caulfield and they've got Nick Suzuki. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to add a Kirby Doc or an Alex Newhook to this core right now, you're not adding it to a core that already includes Uri Slavkovsky, a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
You're adding it to a group that
Nick Suzuki's got 30 plus. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt Coronado and Jacob Pelche and Connor Zary.
Those are all secondary pieces.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
At this point.
That's what would give me pause. That's where I would say, okay, would I rather trade for a guy who's already that far along in his developmental pipeline? Now, if you're talking about a guy like Anton Lundell, that's an entirely different conversation.
Well, how would he be? 2021?
Yeah, he's a younger guy.
I like Lundell.
That's an entirely different conversation. Yeah. But for an older guy like Necas, it would be tough for me because
Pinto's 23 as well. Yeah, so it's a good point you make. You want someone that is still got a lot of their prime left in fall of 2027.
Right, exactly.
Not someone who you're like, oh, maybe he'll still be good. No. If you're coming in and you're going to be a core piece, you have to have a window that matches when this team's next contention window is, or it's just not really a great deal.
Now, who knows what the heck happens? They might sign Travis Konechny to a free agent deal next summer. Who knows? He lives in Calgary. He could put a dotted line, raise his kids here, play hockey, but he already does raise his kids here. So who knows? But it's just a matter of, for me, without that knowledge, without that in my back pocket, if you're adding Necas, you're trying to build something. You're trying to build something. To me, that screams
that's short term
for now.
Long term, yeah.
And that to me is something I would be scared of.
Yeah. And the other piece would be you need to understand what the probability of an NHL player is with that Vancouver pick.
Yeah, there are good players, and
but you can also, what are we talking? Are you a 1 in 3? What, somewhere between 25 and 30, I guess 33 and 50% chance of hitting at the draft. But if you do hit, it can be a really good player.
But here's the value proposition for me.
Okay.
Is if you have Martin Necas and he's 25 already, or however old he is.
Yeah, he's 25.
Yeah. And you have him and you sign him to a 4-year deal and you don't make the playoffs once with him, then you're looking at 29-year-old Martin Necas, who you're trying to flip for a pick down the line.
Yep. And he's probably hurt your draft stock and helped it over those 4 years.
So that value proposition is entirely in there as well.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the bigger thing. Like, we know Craig Conroy is rebuilding this team in the sense that he's getting rid of older players on expiring contracts, bringing in younger players, collecting more draft picks. But how deep do you go and which assets? Like, I think what he does with Sharon Govich would be very telling, because that to me is, of the 3 free agent wingers, centers, forwards, whatever you call them, in the top 9, he to me is, I think, the hardest to replace.
Yeah.
Because he can play the middle. What he does with Sharon Govich is probably telling on how deep and dark potentially the rebuild could be. Because if July 2, he's re-upped to a 6-7 year deal, you're like, holy shit. Okay. Well, this isn't going to be a full scale down to the studs. This is going to be maybe we get goaltending and we push for the playoffs. And if we don't, we'll hit the brakes a bit and make sure our pick's in the top 10. But it's not like this is Buffalo in the McDavid draft year. This is not stripped to the studs. There's still good players here. You still have Kadri. You still have Weegar. You still have Anderson. You still have Huberdeau to an extent. Coleman.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like this is a bad team with no chance. It's a team that lacks star players that needs a lot of things to go right. And if you're re-upping Sharangovich, you're not really going full rebuild.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about the whole tear it down thing. And I think there's a pathway where they can make it out of this relatively unscathed with a good new core without going scorched earth. And I think
that's the challenge.
Depends on them having some draft luck. It depends on them leaning into their bad years. And right now, this is a year that they're leaning into. And
they got to lean into it next year with their asset management.
Lean into it next year as well.
I agree.
So,
and they'll never tell you that, by the way. Craig Conroy's not going to say, yeah, we have to give our pick to Montreal unless it's in the top 10. We're really going to make a concerted effort to collect young assets and make sure our pick's in the top 10. He doesn't say that.
But they
but they know.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they're going to try to win and they're going to be active in free agency. It's like, yeah, I mean, everyone wants to win more than lose and would like to get certain guys to come play for them, but don't think that that's too advanced for them to understand.
This is a team that finished 4th from last in 2014. It's a team that was a team that was not stripped down to the studs. It was
and in 13, they picked 6th overall where they got Monahan.
They still had Mike Camilleri and Mark Giordano and TJ Brody and Michael Backlund and some veterans, like Stempniak, Hoodler. They had good players. It was just, and they had Sean Monahan on that team too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a case where they have to build a core. I think they are. I go back to that Jay Feaster quote about intellectual honesty.
Yeah.
If they're honest with themselves, they know they don't have a core right now.
Yeah.
It's something that they have to build. It's going to start this year with who they end up picking. And once you get that one piece, it's a lot easier to get guys to coalesce around them.
Yeah. Well, and it shores up the shopping list. They've got 2 major items. They need a blue chip defenseman and they need a number 1 center. And if they can find either in the draft this year, it's like, whew, okay. And then you also got a Markstrom trade where you might be able to find one of those pieces.
And they need some wingers too. Quite frankly, I'm not convinced the wingers they already have are going to be their future long-term guys.
No, I don't think they have room for wingers next year, but organizationally, long-term, medium-term, they absolutely need some scoring wingers. Yeah.
Get Tisha Ginla. Do it. Do it.
Would you do it at 8 or is that too soon?
I don't know. Like it depends on who goes before him. We can talk about this all day long.
So do you have 5D as a separate group amongst the rest of the D? Do you have a class of 3? How do you have the D sorted, or are you not there yet in terms of sorting
defense? I'm not there, but the defensemen, the guys, I would really struggle with picking Iginla over Sam Dickinson, and I would really struggle with picking Iginla over Lev Shunov.
So that's 2 of the 5 that we expect to go in the top 10.
And I would probably struggle with them taking Iginla over Zane Parekh.
Yeah.
The other 2, Saleyev and Boyum, I don't know. They're sort of an opposite.
Zeev Boyum might be name of the draft.
Opposite ends of the spectrum there, in terms of one guy's 6'7", the other guy's 5'11".
Yeah.
You can go either way. They have flaws. And with Tej, I mean, it goes back to the divide between Marco Rossi and Jack Quinn in their draft years in 2020, where it was, Jack Quinn's this winger who scores a lot. Marco Rossi's this center who has 120 points. That to me is sort of the Iginla, Berkeley, Catton type of equation they have to solve. And I could totally see them going Iginla if they think Catton is going to be a winger. I could see them saying Iginla is going to be a better winger.
Yeah. But if they think Catton's a center, then it's like shit.
To me, there are, you have Celebrini, you have Ivan Demonov, you've got Caden Lindstrom, and after that, it's a real mess with the forwards.
So let's say they pick 8. The 3 centers you mentioned are probably off the board.
And that's where
3 to 5 defensemen are off the board.
That's where you got the Consta Helleniuses, you got the Berkeley Cattons, and if you don't think either of those guys end up being a center in the NHL, which I think that is a very real question to ask, you sit there and say, we've got a guy in Iginla who has 50 goals in the WHL this year, who is a 6'1" mean winger,
and who is young and is really just developed in leaps and bounds the last 2 years in a row.
September 10th, I think, is his birthday. He misses the cutoff for being a 2025 pick by like 6 days. So
so he's the youngest player from his draft class.
one of the
essentially.
youngest. It is such an intriguing question that they'll have to answer. And
there will
don't
be
envy
players
them.
a year older than him.
It's why you would love to have 2 picks there, because if you end up having 8 and 12, then even if you pick Tej at 8, then at 12 you can go for the best defenseman available. It is going to be so fascinating. For me, it really drops off after the 14-15 level.
Okay.
Then there are a lot of guys sort of coming up who have flaws, who are wingers, who you have defensemen who have missed time with injury, like Adam Juracek. It's going to be so interesting.
Yeah, and we'll have lots of time for the draft stuff.
Tons.
I've sort of heard broad sweeping comments on the draft class, and obviously asked a lot of people about Iginla because of the tie-ins here. You just can't miss that. But there's some intriguing talents here. Like Yzerman's putting up stupid numbers on the U18 team. Is he there when they pick? Probably. But not a center, maybe.
It is a draft where you would love to get 2 of those top guys.
Yeah.
Because it gives you that insurance. It gives you that sort of redundancy. And that's what the Flames lack, is that redundancy.
Yeah, it's interesting. And we'll have lots of time for that. Okay. Jack, unless there's something pressing, this has been 96 minutes.
More than enough.
Of 2 talking people that don't stop talking. God damn it, Mike.
That was the number one thing somebody said to me when I said I was coming on with Pinder is you're not going to get any words in.
Well, you got some words.
I got some words in.
We both got words in. It's because we could go till 2 a.m.
Yep.
Jack, we're sorry. Can you please respond and acknowledge that you're still awake? We're sorry.
Yes, we're good.
Sorry, Jack.
Very quickly before we go, on sale for the public today. We are back with the second edition of the playoff draft, live from the Greg Resort and Casino. We've got a banquet room. We're gonna have a ton of fun. Boom and I on the mics. Believe Retro is gonna be back for this. Lanyards, $1,500 a table. You plus 7 others. We had teams dressed up, so you knew they were the same draft team. You know how the Phoenix Coyotes go to the draft, your boys, and they all wear the same suits. We did that. People that were selecting players that had already been taken were like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe the player's already taken. Another $50 for Kids Sport. It's all in benefit of Kids Sport. You can go and express your interest to Eden at kidsportcalgary.ca. Let them know you're interested in a team. 2-3 teams moved today on top of the renewals we had last year. It just went public today. Get on this if you're interested. It was an absolute blast last year. I do not hesitate to say one of the better events or nights we've had as a trio, Boom, Rhett, and myself, in the 10-ish years we've worked together. It was an absolute riot. Had a ton of fun. So watch for that. And Casey may be there from Greta, which means you're going to have a tough time getting any Oilers unless you are right at the top of the board. Because we've done the watch parties at Greta, which were a blast. And literally he was blasting one of those megaphones in our ears after one of 2 Oiler goals when they got thoroughly thumped at home by the Calgary Flames a month and a half ago.
Why would you want to draft any guys who are going to be out in the first, second round?
It's a very good question. We'll ask Casey that if he shows up to the draft. I think he's got a flight from Toronto. He's got to move. Either way, it's going to be a ton of fun. And shout out to Casey at Greta, who will be all over all the Oilers if he's there. So, fellas, thank you for watching. That might have been very heavy, very nerdy, or it might have been very awesome, depending where you are on the fan spectrum and your ability to hear from people that think they know what they're talking about at great length.
The question, the operative word there is think.
I think you're right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mike. Always good. Always fun. Nice to do one with you, sir.
Yeah, anytime. I'd be happy to reprise my role. It might be in the works. We'll see. It'll be Pike and Kent, the Flame Nation Godfathers, on Thursday following the Winnipeg game, and the In the Dome fellas may not be in one following a Battle of Alberta. Oh, and they just hate the Oilers. It's beautiful stuff. I've been listening to the pod. Oh, they rip into them.
Makes their blood boil. It's just beautiful stuff. They'll have the sweatpants and dress shoes jokes following the Battle of Alberta late Saturday night on Afterburner. See you on Bomber tomorrow.